The old city of Charleston always held a certain magic for me. Not the kind that sparkles in tourist brochures, but the quiet, enduring magic held within peeling paint, wrought iron gates that have stood for centuries, and the hushed archives where history sleeps. My life as an archivist was perfectly suited to this. Quiet, steeped in the past, a world away from the glittering surface that so many chased. My small apartment, nestled in the historic South of Broad neighborhood, was filled with the scent of old paper and beeswax polish, my treasures not jewels or designer bags, but first editions and antique maps. It was a simple life, a life I loved. What people didn't often see, or perhaps chose not to see, was the depth beneath the quiet surface. My work wasn't just about cataloging dust-covered manuscripts. It was about preserving stories, understanding the foundations of things, finding value in what others overlooked. It required patience, meticulous attention to detail, and a quiet kind of strength. My family, particularly my mother, Sarah, and younger sister, Chloe, had always struggled with this. To them, my life was sweetly peculiar, as Mother once put it, usually followed by a sigh. Chloe was the star, the one destined for a life of social prominence, fabulous parties, and a husband with the right pedigree and, more importantly, the right bank account. I was the quiet, bookish older sister, easily dismissed, perhaps a little embarrassing. Today, that contrast was set to be put on full display. It was the engagement announcement party for Chloe and Jacob Harrison. The Harrisons were old money, prominent in luxury real estate, and Mother had been practically vibrating with excitement since the engagement was announced. The party was being held at one of Charleston's most exclusive historic mansions, a place usually reserved for major cultural events or the city's elite. It was a fitting stage for Mother's carefully curated performance of family success. My phone rang, startling me out of cataloging some particularly fragile Revolutionary War-era letters. Sarah Parker flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath, bracing myself. Riley? Good, you're finally answering. Mother's voice, sharp as always, cut through the quiet. Just reminding you about tonight. 6:30 sharp at the Laguerre house. Don't be late, it looks bad. I remember, Mother. I'll be there, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. And please, she continued, ignoring me, try to make an effort. This isn't one of your dusty library events. We're something festive. Something that doesn't look like you borrowed it from one of your ancestors. A familiar ache settled in my chest. It was always something. My clothes, my hair, my job, my quiet nature. I'll wear a dress, Mother. I promise. And Ethan is coming, correct? She asked, the shift in tone barely noticeable, but I heard the underlying skepticism. Mother and Chloe had never quite approved of Ethan. He was successful, incredibly so, in the tech world, but he was private, understated, and didn't fit their mold of flashy wealth. They couldn't categorize him easily, which made them uncomfortable. Yes, he'll be there, I confirmed. Ethan Reed. Just thinking his name brought a warmth that settled the ache. He saw me, truly saw me, in a way my family never had. He knew my world, both the quiet one and the one my family was oblivious to. Well, see you at 6:30. And Riley? Try to mingle. Don't just stand in a corner talking about old paper. The call ended abruptly, leaving a familiar knot in my stomach. I sighed, pushing away the letters. My world might be quiet, but it wasn't small. It was full of history, stories, and a significance my family wouldn't understand. As I walked towards my closet, I thought of Ethan. He was my anchor, my quiet strength mirroring my own. We understood each other, our lives built on substance rather than show. I chose a dress, a deep sapphire blue silk that was elegant and simple. It felt like me. As I did my hair and makeup, keeping it understated, my phone buzzed again. A text from Ethan, thinking of you. Ready to face the lions. I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes. Almost. Thanks for being in my corner. Always, he replied instantly. See you soon. You'll be magnificent. His quiet confidence was a bomb. With Ethan by my side, I could face anything. I finished getting ready, put on my classic pearl earrings, and slipped on a pair of simple, elegant heels. Sensible, yes, but beautiful. As I locked my apartment door, I reminded myself, Stay calm. Be yourself. You have nothing to prove. Arriving at the Laguerre house felt like stepping onto a stage. The mansion glowed, lit by spotlights, a symbol of the kind of old Charleston grandeur my family aspired to. As the valet opened my car door, one of the event managers, Mr. Evans, a man I knew well, gave me a brief, respectful nod before turning back to the arriving guests. It was a small gesture, easily missed, but it grounded me. This place, these old stones, felt more like home than my family ever had. Inside, the air was thick with perfume, polite laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Waiters circulated with trays of canapes. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. It was exactly the kind of scene Sarah adored. I spotted them quickly, Sarah, resplendent in a shimmering gown, holding court near the entrance, and Chloe, radiant in champagne lace, looking every bit the blushing bride-to-be beside Jacob Harrison. Jacob was tall, polished, and looked slightly overwhelmed by the spectacle. His parents, Robert and Victoria Harrison, stood nearby, observing the scene with polite, reserved expressions. They exuded old money elegance, quiet confidence rather than flashy display. I made my way through the mingling guests, offering small smiles. I saw my Aunt Caroline near a floral arrangement, giving me a fleeting, worried smile. Aunt Caroline was Mother's sister, a kind but timid woman who often seemed as out of place in these gatherings as I felt. Across the room, I spotted my friend Lucas, another quiet soul navigating the social waters. He gave me a look of solidarity, a slight grimace acknowledging the family drama he knew I often faced. Nearby, I overheard Chloe's friend Jessica, a woman whose entire existence seemed dedicated to discussing brands and social media, make a dismissive comment about someone's dated handbag. The superficiality was already grating. Mother's eyes landed on me. Her smile, previously fixed, tightened almost imperceptibly. "Riley, you're here," she said, her tone lacking genuine warmth. "And you brought Ethan." "Good." It sounded less like approval, more like a surprised acknowledgement. She quickly looked my dress up and down. "That's blue." "Yes, Mother." "It is," I replied, keeping my voice even. Chloe offered a slightly forced smile. "Hi, Riley. Well, you're here." "Congratulations, Chloe." "You look beautiful," I said sincerely. Sarah quickly steered the conversation. "Robert, Victoria, Jacob. This is my older daughter, Riley, and her fiancé, Ethan Reed." She waved a hand dismissively. "Riley works with old books. Very quaint." Robert Harrison extended a hand to me, his grip firm but friendly. "A pleasure to meet you, Riley. My wife and I appreciate history. Charleston wouldn't be Charleston without it." His eyes held genuine interest. "Archiving sounds fascinating. What kind of things do you work with?" Before I could answer, Sarah cut in smoothly, linking arms with Victoria Harrison. "Oh, it's mostly dusty old papers. Nothing very exciting. Now, Chloe here, she's embarking on a truly exciting future. Jacob's family is in real estate, luxury properties. They're building an empire." Victoria Harrison smiled politely, but her gaze lingered on me for a moment longer, a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. Ethan, meanwhile, offered a quiet, polite greeting to everyone, his presence a calm force beside me. He didn't need to be loud to command respect. The conversation swirled around me. Wedding plans, guest lists, potential honeymoon destinations, all measured in cost and prestige. Sarah and Chloe spoke about family unity and everyone pulling together, their eyes occasionally drifting towards me. It was clear the topic of financial contribution wasn't far from their minds. I saw Aunt Caroline wring her hands slightly from across the room. As we moved towards the dining room, a waiter spilled a drink nearby, causing a brief flurry. Mr. Evans, the manager, was immediately there, handling it with calm efficiency. He glanced at me again, a subtle, almost imperceptible exchange passed between us, not of words, but of acknowledgement. We were seated at a large, prominent table. Sarah made sure we were in the center, where she could hold court. As the first course was served, a delicate oyster bisque, Sarah's mood seemed to elevate, her voice growing louder, her gestures more expansive, fueled by a few glasses of champagne. The Harrisons watched her with polite, slightly strained smiles. The conversation inevitably turned back to the wedding and Chloe's future. Chloe has such big dreams, Sarah declared, leaning forward conspiratorially to Victoria Harrison. Starting a business, finding the perfect home with Jacob, it all takes such support. She punctuated this by looking pointedly at me. Family needs to support family after all. Especially when one member has, shall we say, fewer immediate financial obligations. I took a slow sip of my water, feeling the tension rise. This was it. The build-up. Riley, Sarah said suddenly, her voice cutting through the polite chatter, loud enough for several nearby tables to hear. I heard you recently came into some funds from that grant or sale, or whatever it was from your archive work. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. I placed it down carefully. It was a small grant, Mother, for a preservation project. And a small amount from authenticating and selling a rare map on behalf of a client, I explained, keeping my voice low. Small? Small is relative, Sarah scoffed, waving her hand. She had that look in her eye, arrogant, entitled, and slightly glazed from the alcohol. When Chloe and Jacob are looking at properties, starting their new life, a little help from family goes a long way. Wouldn't you agree? Silence fell over our table. The Harrisons stiffened. Jacob looked down at his plate. Chloe shifted uncomfortably but remained silent. All eyes were on me. Mother, I said calmly, choosing my words carefully. My work finances are dedicated to preservation efforts and my living expenses. They aren't discretionary funds. Sarah's smile turned predatory. Discretionary? Helping your sister isn't discretionary, Riley. It's family duty. She leaned forward, her voice dropping slightly, but still easily audible. Chloe needs a down payment for that lovely condo they're considering on the Battery. It's $50,000. I expect you to contribute that amount. The words landed like a physical blow, stunning the table into absolute silence. $50,000. Not a request, but a demand. Framed as my obligation. The sheer audacity, the public nature of it, took my breath away for a second. I saw the shock on Robert and Victoria Harrison's faces. Jacob looked pale. Chloe finally looked up, her eyes wide, not necessarily with shame, but maybe with a mix of shock and expectation. I slowly picked up my water glass again. My hand was steady. I met Sarah's eyes, which were cold and demanding. I thought of my quiet life, the value I placed on integrity, the love I shared with Ethan, things she couldn't measure in dollars. I'm sorry, Mother, I said, my voice clear and calm, cutting through the silence. But no, I will not be giving you $50,000 for Chloe's down payment. A collective gasp seemed to ripple through the surrounding tables. Silence stretched, thick and heavy. Sarah's face hardened, turning an angry red. Chloe let out a small, outraged sound. You refuse? Sarah stammered, rising from her seat, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Heads turned from every corner of the room. The soft piano music seemed to falter. How dare you? In front of everyone. After everything. Mother, please, I said, trying to keep the situation from completely imploding, though I knew it was likely futile. This isn't the place for this. The hell it isn't, she shrieked, her voice carrying across the elegant room. People were openly staring now. Waiters paused, looking uncomfortable. You sit here, looking so smug in your little blue dress, while your sister is trying to build a future. You've always been selfish, Riley. Always in your own little world, never caring about what this family needs. Jacob looked mortified. Robert Harrison stood up slowly, his face stern. Victoria reached a hand towards Sarah, a silent plea to stop. Aunt Caroline whispered, Sarah, no, please. Lucas looked ready to intervene, his hands clenched, but Sarah was beyond reason. You think you're too good for us? With your dusty books and your quiet little life. She grabbed a glass from the table, not her wine this time, but a glass of water. Maybe this will wash some sense into you. Before I could react, she threw the water directly at me. It hit my face, my hair, my dress, soaking me instantly. Cold water streamed down my face, dripping from my hair onto the elegant tablecloth. The shock was immediate, followed by a burning wave of public humiliation. Gasps filled the air. My dress, now dark and clinging in patches, felt heavy and revealing. Sarah wasn't finished. Still yelling about my selfishness, she lunged forward, grabbing my arm tightly, her nails digging into my skin. She tried to yank me up, as if to drag me away, screaming, "You're a disgrace. A complete and utter disgrace to this family. Your father would be ashamed." The words, especially mentioning my deceased father, hit harder than the cold water. But the physical grab, the public drenching, the raw humiliation in front of so many people, especially the Harrisons and the event staff, something inside me shifted irrevocably. I pulled my arm free, gently but firmly, maintaining my balance. I stood taller, damp and exposed, but resolute. I met Sarah's eyes, seeing not just rage, but a pathetic desperation. I would not let her break me, not here, not ever again. Just as Sarah was drawing breath for another scream, the double doors to the main hall swung open again, and Ethan walked in. His eyes found mine instantly. He saw the scene, the crowd, Sarah's furious face, my wet dress, my controlled stance. His expression tightened, a flash of protective anger, but it was quickly masked by his usual calm demeanor. He walked directly towards me, his steps steady and purposeful. He ignored Sarah, who was still sputtering. He reached me, his hand finding the small of my back, a comforting anchor. "Are you okay, Riley?" he murmured, his voice low and for my ears only. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment, the emotions choking me. Sarah turned her fury on him. "And who do you think you are, interfering? This is family business. You don't belong here." Ethan turned his gaze from me to Sarah, and then to the stunned faces of the Harrisons and the watching crowd. His voice, though not loud, carried an undeniable authority that silenced even Sarah. "Actually, Mrs. Parker," he said calmly, using her formal name, "this concerns me very much. And I believe there's been a significant misunderstanding about Riley here tonight." He paused, letting the silence hang in the air, holding everyone's attention. Then, he delivered the words that would shatter Sarah's carefully constructed world. "Riley isn't just an archivist with little projects," Ethan stated, his gaze sweeping over the room. "She is the primary trustee and active steward of the Atherton Trust." The name Atherton Trust dropped into the room like a bomb. Gasps erupted. The Atherton Trust was synonymous with Charleston's deepest roots, its wealthiest families, its most significant historical preservation. It owned vast tracts of land, countless historical artifacts, and a portfolio of properties including museums, landmarks, and several of the city's most iconic historic houses used for exclusive events. Like this one. Sarah's face went ashen. Her mouth fell open. Chloe's eyes were wide as saucers. A small crystal ornament she had been holding slipped from her nerveless fingers and clattered onto the table. Robert and Victoria Harrison leaned forward, their expressions shifting from shock to immediate, intense interest and respect. That's impossible," Sarah stammered, her voice barely a whisper shaking. "The Atherton Trust. It's worth billions. It owns places like this." "Precisely," Ethan said calmly. "Riley has quietly and diligently overseen its operations, preservation efforts, and significant philanthropic activities for years. Her work with old books is the core of her dedication to history and culture, funded and directed by the Trust's resources." Standing there, damp and publicly shamed, I felt a surge of power that wasn't loud or aggressive, but quiet and absolute. It was time. "I didn't keep my involvement with the Trust a secret because I was ashamed of it," I said, my voice steady despite the lingering sting of the cold water. "All eyes turned to me now. I kept it private from this family because I wanted you to see me. I wanted to see if you could value me for who I am, for my dedication, my work ethic, my quiet passions, not for the wealth or status that comes with the Trust." I looked at Sarah and Chloe, their faces a mixture of shock, shame, and utter disbelief. "You constantly judged me for not fitting into your world of appearances and acquisition," I continued, the words flowing, fueled by years of being overlooked. "You dismissed my work, my life, as unimportant because it didn't come with a flashy title or a public price tag. All this time, I was quietly working to preserve the very history and beauty that places like this mansion represent. building something real, something lasting. The silence was deafening. Sarah sank back into her chair, covering her face with trembling hands. Chloe looked utterly lost. Robert Harrison was the first to recover. He turned to me, his face etched with genuine admiration. "Miss Parker," he said, his voice full of respect. "Your dedication to preservation is admirable. Your integrity in keeping such a significant role quiet speaks volumes about your character. It is truly an honor to make your acquaintance properly." Victoria Harrison nodded in agreement, her eyes warm. They understood, perhaps better than anyone in the room, the difference between old money built on stewardship and new money focused on display. Sarah finally looked up, her face streaked with tears. "Riley, I didn't know," she whispered, her earlier fury gone, replaced by a devastating realization of her mistake. "I'm so sorry. I've been foolish. Blinded." "No, Mother," I said softly, shaking my head. "You never bothered to ask. You only judged." Chloe finally spoke, her voice small. "Riley, I had no idea. I just thought, I'm sorry." I looked at my sister. For the first time in years, I didn't see a rival or the favored child, but just a young woman who had been raised with a skewed set of values. "You never asked," I repeated gently. "You only judged." Jacob reached for Chloe's hand, a gesture that seemed to say much about their future and the potential changes their relationship might need. Ethan squeezed my hand, grounding me. "I think," Ethan said quietly, addressing me, "it's time we left." I nodded. I turned back to the table one last time. "I will not be providing $50,000 for the down payment," I stated calmly, making sure there was no lingering ambiguity. "However, I do wish you both," I looked at Chloe and Jacob, "happiness and a future built on mutual respect, not on financial transactions or appearances." I looked at Sarah. "Mother," I said, my voice soft but firm, "if you want a relationship with me, it will be built on respect for who I am, not on expectations of what I can provide or conform to." Sarah buried her face in her hands, sobbing silently. With Ethan's arm supportively around my shoulders, we walked out of the Laguerre house. The crowd parted for us in silence. As we stepped outside, the Charleston night air felt cool and clean against my skin, still damp from the spilled water. The mansion glowed behind us, no longer a stage of judgment, but just one of the many beautiful places I was dedicated to preserving. Something heavy had lifted. The validation hadn't come from their approval, but from my own quiet strength, my values, and the love of the man beside me. I felt completely, undeniably free. Months later, the scent of old paper and beeswax still filled my apartment, but it felt different now, lighter, freer. The incident at the Laguerre house had, as expected, caused a seismic shift. The relationship with my mother and sister was fragile, but there were small signs of change. Sarah was tentatively trying to build a connection based on respect, acknowledging my work and my time rather than demanding things. Chloe, perhaps influenced by the Harrisons' quiet disapproval of her earlier behavior, or simply seeing the reality of my world, seemed more thoughtful. She even asked me for advice about finding an internship related to event planning for historic venues. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a start, built on my terms. Ethan and I were stronger than ever. We worked together now, openly managing the Atherton Trust. He handled the complex finances and legalities, while I oversaw the preservation projects, the archives, the connection to history. I was still the quiet archivist, but I was also a steward of significant resources, using them to protect the very things I loved. My life was a blend of quiet study and impactful action, authentic and fulfilling. I attended events now too, not social performances, but galas supporting preservation, historical society meetings, trust functions. People knew who I was, not just because of the name Atherton, but because of my genuine passion and integrity. Robert and Victoria Harrison became allies, respecting my approach. Walking hand in hand with Ethan through one of the Trust's beautiful gardens, I felt a deep sense of peace. My life wasn't loud or flashy, but it was rich in history, rich in purpose, and richest of all in the quiet, unwavering love and respect I shared with Ethan. I had found my true place, not in my family's narrow definition of success, but in the enduring value of things preserved, including my own soul. My quiet strength had proven to be more powerful than any display of wealth or social maneuvering. I was Riley, the keeper of quiet treasures, and my life was finally, truly my own.